Welcome everybody, Tucson Acres. I just finished up making a short on things to consider when choosing a location for homesteading. And this is my video, the follow-up video, to go through line by line and just my thought process and things I think people should consider when choosing their location. Honestly, I think it's probably the most important decision that you have to make when deciding to homestead, all right? You know, where you're gonna end up for, theoretically the rest of your life. I'm just going to start right at the top of my list and work my way through it. And if you got any questions, please throw it down in the comments, and we'll work it out. And I'll try to elaborate, at least, from my limited experience. So number one I got is climate. I grew up in northern Michigan, lots of snow. We love it, but it makes a huge difference. There's a lot of my days throughout the winter where I spend moving snow. I got a huge driveway. I plow my family and friends' driveways. It's a big ordeal. I got to keep paths clear for feeding animals, and huge deal. So that's something to consider. Our growing season is super short. That's another thing to talk about later. So we'll get to that. But climate, if you can't handle the cold, or you don't like the cold, or whatever, but the opposite side of that coin is that it keeps a lot of the riffraff out. We're pretty isolated up here. Now we do get a lot of southern Michiganders that come up here to snowmobile and have fun in the snow. We got ski resorts all over the place, and ice fishing all winter long, where they don't have that in southern Michigan. So it is what it is. You got to think about that. Proximity to family and friends. When I moved up here, I had some family here. I still have an uncle across the street, and having a local support group when you're getting started out, it does make a big difference. And if you don't have that initially, who are you going to call if your car breaks down on the side of the road? You're going to have to call a tow truck or something, versus calling your buddy or calling your mom or dad or brother or whatever. So something to think about. Property taxes, all right? My last duty station in the military was in New Jersey, and holy crap, we were renting. I didn't want to buy in Jersey, but we rented there, and I found out that the property we were living at, the monthly property taxes were a little over $1,000 a month. So, annually over $12K a year. That's more than twice what I pay in property taxes annually here. Actually, that's more than 6 times as much. I don't even pay $2,000 a year. I think I'm paying $1,200-1,300 a month on about 5 acres. I'm sorry, $1,200-1,300 a year on 5 acres. It's like $600-700, $650, something like that, every 6 months. Huge difference, and this is Michigan. I know other states are a lot different. Some states have a little bit less, probably not much less, but that, holy cow, that's a huge difference. If you're in Jersey, New York, I know is another bad one, California. Florida's not bad. I've lived down there. It's very similar to here. So again, all things to consider. Availability of land, where I am up here, there's honestly quite a bit of property for sale. Now it's starting to, get taken up quite a bit, but there's still good land left. I mean, and when I say good land, I mean unmolested, still got, old growth trees on it. Sure, you could clear some for either pasture or yard or whatever. But a lot of places don't really have that kind of availability anymore. A big one for me is natural disasters. One of the trade-offs living up in northern Michigan, of dealing with snow all winter long, is that we don't get hurricanes, we don't get earthquakes. We did actually get a tornado right here locally last year, 2022, and that's like a once in 20-year event. When I was a kid, there was one that come through as well. This one, and it's a very small path. It's not like a mile-wide destruction path, but they do happen. It's just extremely rare where we live. But as far, when I was living in Florida, every fall, got to watch out for the hurricanes coming through, and it's just a pain in the butt. If you live in the, the south, mid-south area, well, not mid-south, sorry, Oklahoma, obviously, the Texas, those midsections there, you got to deal with Tornado Alley. It is a real thing, right? Whereas here, even though we got one, it's really not a real thing because it doesn't happen. Now, obviously, the people that were affected would beg to differ, but you know what I mean, what I'm getting at. So it is a trade-off. If you live in Montana, Minnesota, North Dakota, Michigan, You know, you're going to deal with these super cold winters, lots of snow, but you pretty much don't have any of the natural disaster type things to deal with. And something that goes right along with that are bugs, pests, and snakes. I put that in the shorts. And, you know, for right locally where I live, we have nothing poisonous, nothing. I don't even have poison ivy anywhere locally here, within probably, I don't know, 5 to 10 miles, I'd say at least. There is poison ivy, poison oak in northern Michigan. It's just not all that prevalent. But as far as spiders, snakes, we do have the Michigan cottonmouth, and it's so seldom. It's not like you hear it on the news all the time, a big deal with snakes, right? We don't have that. We don't have the poisonous frogs. I know there is a few, like black widows. I know they've been here, but the cold really gets rid of most of that crap. Fleas and ticks, yes and no. Sometimes it's really bad, sometimes it's not. But I tell you what, it's not nearly as bad as it was in Florida. And I've been up north too, in Canada and Alaska. And I'll tell you what, the further north you get, the worse the bugs are, which is kind of weird, but that's the honest God truth. Here's one that you shouldn't have to consider, but you do. You need to. It's politics. It kind of sucks. You know, Michigan, out of like the 88 counties in Michigan, it's like 84 of them are blood red on the map, the voting map, but the 4 counties that vote blue make the state blue. And it is what it is. You know, that's to each their own. I don't care. I don't want to have a political discussion on this channel. I'm just pointing it out. It's something that you need to think about. Now, I am a little bit worried because this past election cycle, things turned even more blue. We had some blue and some red in the offices down in Lansing, and now it's all blue, and that kind of worries me with some radical changes that they might be trying to push when, you know, 90+% of the counties in this state don't agree. And it's kind of frustrating, but that's something you need to consider. There's a lot of states where it's, you know, if you are living in the country, you usually vote a certain way, and that's fine. You know, people who live in the city, they vote their way too, and that's fine. You know, whatever works for them, you know, whatever works for us is the way I see it. And it's just something you have to consider when you're moving. The land topography, all right? Hills, flats, you know, rolling hills, whatever. Where I live currently, my property, there's hardly any flat area here. You know, even my yard, when I'm mowing it, is on a slant, you know, which is kind of nice for watershed. I don't really get any pooling of water on the ground. Doesn't matter how much it rains. I get ruts in my driveway, but I don't really get any standing water per se. So, you know, flooding wouldn't really be an issue here, no matter how much rain we get. I mean, just, you know, a quarter mile that way is another 200 feet lower than we are with a pond. So, I mean, it'd have to be the 40 days, 40 nights kind of a thing to make any real difference around here. But it also makes it difficult to, you know, grow agriculture. You know, if whether we have a garden and it's on a slight slope, but having, say, a pasture, a field, there are spots. Honestly, there's lots of spots, but this particular property that I'm on, there's not really a whole lot of flat, you know, open ground to have a huge garden or to put a stable in, or, you know, a pasture for cows or horses or whatnot. So it's something to consider when you're looking at properties. Let's see, proximity to towns and roads. All right, so I lived in New Jersey and I lived in Florida, and I was always near or in big towns or even cities, and I got really accustomed to being able to just, you know, within 5-10 minutes be at a big store, go here, go there, specialty stores. You know, if I'm looking for a part to repair a microwave or a steel stock store, there was always something pretty close by, a specialty tool, you know, all these random things that I'm working on. I always end up needing something unique, and I've always had the opportunity and the availability of a local place that I could just cruise on over to. Here, I am an hour and a half from a big town that has a mall. Our closest town, about 12 to 14 miles-ish. We got a Home Depot, and it's growing, but it's not very big, and they don't have hardly any specialty stores. It's kind of a pain in the butt, and all the time. I've just gotten really accustomed to Amazon, eBay. You know, when I need parts for tools and stuff, I have to special order it. It's different for sure, and it's frustrating a lot of times because I'll be working on something and I know I could have it, you know, where I used to live, have it the same day and finish the project, and now I can't. You know, it's something you got to learn to work with. But on the flip side of that, I love it. We don't hear traffic at our house. We don't, you know, we barely ever see cars going down the road. It's beautiful, it's quiet. So it's a trade, you know, and you got to think about that. I'm perfectly fine not being near the big towns. We make a trip to that you know, town that has the mall, hour-and-a-half drive away, you know, probably 3-4 times a year. And we make a big day out of it. We'll go see a movie because they got a big AMC. You know, we don't have that here. We do have a movie theater, but it's pretty small. All right, moving on. Water availability. So that's something that everybody needs to think about. You know, if say the whole, you know, society collapses, the grid goes down, whatever, or even just irrigation for your property or your well water, you know, you got to think about that kind of, you know, you're going to have animals, you're going to have a family, whatever it is, whatever the case is, or even just for yourself, you know, what if, you know, because you're isolated out here. We've got a pond and a river that's just, you know, a quarter mile from here, and we could get water and sterilize it. I've got backup generators that can run our well, so I know we can get water if and when we need it in any sort of emergency situation. So something, again, just to keep in mind. Our growing season, I kind of touched on this earlier, 4 months. You know, it's not uncommon for us to get our last frost in the first week of June. That makes it really tough, you know, because Mrs. H will, you know, seed all of her garden plants inside like the middle of April to May 1st, somewhere in there. And we put them in the windows, and we've tried putting a small greenhouse on our porch on the south side of the house. And of course we got this nasty windstorm. I even had the thing, you know, ratchet strapped to the railing, and it still got blown over, and we lost half of our plants. So it's a struggle for sure. A lot of times, you know, say you do plant early June, you know, you're looking at September, October for the end of the growing season, and it's, again, not uncommon for us to get a frost then as well. Whereas down south, you know, out west, you know, your growing season is going to be significantly longer. It is what it is. You know, it's what we got to deal with, and we make do, and obviously a lot of other people do. Northern Michigan is huge for potatoes and corn. And there's huge fields all over the place up here with potatoes and corn, and beans. That's a big crop too. So it can be done. I mean, the farm up the road that sells potatoes, they're one of the biggest in the country. They sell millions and millions of dollars worth of potatoes each year. All right, so that's the growing season thing to think about. Trees in the forest. So my property is at least half wooded. I heat the home and my barn primarily, well, actually exclusively with wood now. So I need it, you know, and I'm actually to the point now where I need so much that it's going to take me 2 months at least every summer to gather enough firewood to make it through the winter. So I'm probably going to start supplementing it just for the time savings alone. But, you know, if we're just heating the house with only the wood stove in the house, we go through about 15 face cord a year. This year, I'm probably going to be going through about 45 to 50 face cord because I'm heating the barn and the house with an outdoor wood boiler. So if you're just heating a home with a wood stove or even a wood furnace or something like that, you know, less than 20 face cord a year, you know, having your own, you know, 10, 20 acres of wooded property would be more than enough for you to gather and collect your own firewood each year. And, you know, at least a couple weeks worth of work, no doubt, but it's doable and it makes a big difference. You know, there's a lot of places in the Midwest where, you know, miles and miles and miles, no trees, right? Or very few trees. So again, you know, keep that in mind when you're thinking down the road, you know, doing that planning out ahead. How do you plan on heating? Because I'll tell you what, my electric cost and my propane cost have way down. My propane bill has dropped by more than 95%. And with the cost of energy these days, that's huge. You know, the first year I was here, I was paying over $700 a month in propane to run a LP boiler, liquid propane boiler in the house. We turned that off and we started using the forced air, which also used propane, and even that was about $250, $300 a month in propane. For the past 2 years, since I cranked up the wood boiler, almost zero for heating costs in propane. Now we still use a gas dryer, and the stove is gas, so we still have to, you know, keep an eye on that. And you know, about 150, 200 gallons a year in propane, so multiply that times about $2.50 per gallon. That's how much we're spending annually now on propane. So that's pretty significant. So if that's where you want to end up down the road, it's something you need to think about. How sustainable is your heating going to be for the long term, the long haul? And the last thing I've got on the list is kind of a goofy one, but I always kind of keep this in mind. Where we're at is pretty much out of the way, all right? And when I say that, I'm talking about if, say, society does collapse, if the power goes out, you know, and you're near big cities, people are going to be leaving the cities. They're, you know, no matter what, they're going to be dispersing. And are you going to be in a path where those people are coming through? You know, because if you are in that scenario, which again, this is, you know, a doomsday, whatever, you know, you can plan for it or you can't. I'm not saying I'm a prepper, you know, big time, but I'm just, you know, keeping it on my mind that, you know, if you're outside of New York City, if you're outside of Detroit, if you're outside of Chicago and the lights go out in those towns, or lights go out everywhere, you know, what's going to happen? You know, you're going to be in direct path and you're going to be overwhelmed. Almost immediately, you're going to be overwhelmed. So being up here where I'm at, it's very secluded, very off the beaten path. Yeah, it's annoying that I have to drive an hour and a half to get to a mall or to get to a Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that. However, if the power goes out in Detroit, I'm 4 hours away from there at least, you know, and especially if it gets that bad, you know, say all the gas stations are down or whatnot. It's not like I'm going to be rushed immediately and I'm not going to have time to react. I'm just going to have to go back and split. We're in a pretty good spot, you know, and our local community is very like-minded. And that's something that I've heard several times, you know, get into a place with people who are like-minded, you know, you and your neighbors, if you all are like-minded and you look out for each other, you know, I call my neighbors when I see something going on and they call me and, you know, hey, did the power go out? Or, hey, did you see that truck go by? You know, and we're all on the same page. Everybody on our road is on the same page. We're constantly in touch with each other. And that's a big deal. You could even make that one of the things to consider, like-minded people. It really is that important. So that's the last of the list. If you got anything that you think should be on the list or you got questions about anything that I just went over, I'd love to elaborate or look into or hear your thoughts. I appreciate you sticking around, and please hit that like and subscribe button. We'll catch you on the next video.